Let's go. It's another beautiful day. It's Tuesday morning. We're going to talk some college football like we always do. Welcome to another marvelous episode of the Governor of College Football. Black Scornley on check, of course. Got this little Bills hoodie on, of course. We got a lot to talk about today on today's docket. Our Into the News segment, we want to talk about Greg McElroy's top 10 quarterbacks in college football. I think overall he did a good list. It's just a couple things I probably disagree with. Also, we're going to talk about the House versus the NCAA. There's this game that's going on in the sport, and this court ruling it's kind of already settled, but shout out to Judge Claudia Wilkin. That's who I actually have on the cover of the thumbnail for today's episode. She wants more, and she's forcing the NCAA to do more, and she's just not going to allow these things to happen because the NCAA for many of years have broke antitrust laws. And then we're also going to get into some Big 12 talk. Big 12 put in 31 players in NFL draft this past year. So we're going to do some Big 12 over-unders. Governor of College Football, hashtag go CFB. CFB Nation, your only college football destination. Let's get it. Governor of College Football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's CJ
defensive
on
minds.
the
They have to be better on that side of the ball. Alrighty, into the news. Like I said, we're going to talk about this girl, McElroy. The ESPN analyst Greg McElroy has released his rankings for the top 10 quarterbacks entering this 2025 college football season. I think, like I said, he did a great job. Most of these times, I don't agree with a lot of these lists that people put out. But Greg McElroy, somebody I really respect. I love his show, Always College Football. He does a great job. So this list, we're going to go over his list. I'm going to tell you what I agree with, and I'm going to tell you what I disagree with. It is what it is. So, at number one, he got Cade Klubnik from Clemson. Cade had 39 yards last season. 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, also rushed for 486 yards on the ground and added another 7 touchdowns. When I think of quarterbacks that are going to be in New York for the Heisman, second week in December, Cade is one of the first names that come to mind because Clemson is returning the production that is returning. Number one in the country in returning production. Because of we've been around Clemson quite often, so what Dabo Swinney has been able to build in Clemson is effing beautiful. The fact that he still wants to do things the old school way. He don't really touch the portal much. He's touched the portal, less than all the other teams in the FBS, or even that, if you want to say the Power 5 level. He has dibbled and dabbled the last couple of years, but I like what they're doing. I love the pairing of Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik, and I think entering year 3, they're going to set the college football world on fire. Coming in at number 2 on Greg McElroy's list, he has John Mateer, Washington State transfer quarterback who transferred to Oklahoma. He had 3,139 yards last season, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and he also rushed for 826 yards on the ground and 15 rush touchdowns. I thought it was important that John Mateer was on this list. Even though Washington State is Power 5, I feel like a lot of people just still miss what Washington State is able to do year in and year out. The year before that, it was Cam Ward lighting it up in Washington State. So John Mateer, Oklahoma's got a good get. Oklahoma defense really, when I think about Oklahoma and I think about the 2024 season, a lot of people don't know how good that defense really was. So offensively, if they can figure some things out, get it together, I truly believe Brent Venables. Many people aren't going to say it. I'll sit here and say it. I ain't going to say he's on a hot seat, but I'm going to say if things don't improve in Norman, man, Nagy is the GM. Nagy will fire him. If he feels like Brent Venables can't get the job done, Nagy will certainly get rid of him. But I believe, even though Oklahoma has a difficult schedule this year, I believe Brent Venables and company will figure it out. And number 3 had Sam Levitt, and this made me happy. Over at CFB Nation, we have a show called Debbie Darlings. And D-Now and Nino does such a great job with that show. As it's a fantasy-centric show. For anybody who don't know, I'm not big into fantasy. I love watching people talk about CFF and then see how college fantasy football has grown over the years. But I really appreciate the show Debbie Darlings, because when I'm looking for who's going to be next on the scene, I look at that show and I'm like, damn, they nailed it again. And Sam Levitt, I had the opportunity. I filled in for D-Now. I believe D-Now had some business elsewhere, and he couldn't do the show. So I had the ability to do the show, and to see that Sam Leverett went off for how he went off last year, 2,885 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, added another 443 yards on the ground, as well as 6 rushing touchdowns on the ground. I love when they get these things right. So it felt special to be a part of that episode. I haven't been on a lot of Debbie Darlings because, like I said, college fantasy football, even though I love hearing people talk about it, it isn't what I'm a lead at. You feel me? I'm an X's and O guy, and I just love talking ball. I love talking shot. Drew Aller is on this list. Drew Aller really left me feeling uncomfortable. And I guess part of the reason was, all right, I'm going to be real with y'all. I picked Penn State to win it all. I seen their path to the college football playoff championship, and I said they probably have one of the best paths to make it to the college football championship. I look at they were coming off strong at the end of the season. Even that loss to Oregon, I didn't think that Penn State was able to put up those type of points, and then a losing effort. I saw something. I'm like, this team can definitely win a national championship. But for whatever reason, I know Notre Dame defense was really good this past season, but Drew Aller was just missing easy throws, and it was difficult to watch. But I do like the pairing of him and Andy Kotelnicki. I like that pairing. Penn State definitely has the best coordinators in the world with Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki. I love that pairing. James Franklin, we starting to run out of excuses. How I felt about Matt Campbell last year, and he answered the call at Iowa State. Because I'm like, Matt Campbell, like, if not now, then when? That was my whole spiel about Matt Campbell and Iowa State last year. If not now, then when? Matt Campbell. He was able to figure it out. And then James Franklin, I propose the same question to you. Yeah, you made the college football playoff. Yeah, you were the second best team per the regular season and the Big Ten last season. But if not now, then when? The talent is there. You just got a huge get in Trevor Pena and the transfer portal from Syracuse. If not now, then when? So I propose that question to James Franklin, and I also propose that question to Drew Aller, because Drew Aller has the talent. You know, I want to see if he can make that jump. So at 4 on this list, if I'm being honest, I probably do like Garrett Nussmeier more than I like Drew Aller. Right now, Garrett Nussmeier is probably leading my vote for somebody that can win the Heisman this upcoming year. You guys also know I'm high on Cade Klubnik as well. They're 1 and 2 in my opinion. And it depends on the day whether I like, who I like more. But Garrett Nussmeier is coming in at 5 from LSU. He had 4,052 yards last year, 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He's number 5. Carson Beck is number 6 on this list. This is why the games are played. I think headed into the 2024 season, and when we was thinking about the 2025 NFL draft, we was like, if Carson Beck can come in and perform, he could possibly be the number 1 pick of the 2025 NFL draft. But these are why the games are played. Like, he wasn't. He ended up transferring. He transferred immediately after Georgia's exit from the college football playoff, and he landed at a place that I think is budding. I think Miami is budding. We see what Cam Ward was able to do there. Mario Cristobal is starting to figure out. I'm not letting Mario Cristobal completely off the hook. Miami had an opportunity to make it to the college football playoff last year. Handle business versus Syracuse. They go to the ACC championship, and I think regardless to if they won or lost, they would have been in. They dropped the ball last year. Mario Cristobal and company dropped the ball. So I got high expectations for Carson Beck this year. I got high expectations for Mario Cristobal. I'm not sure if those expectations will be met, but nonetheless, I still have high expectations for both. Lenore Sellers, I love that Lenore Sellers is on this list for South Carolina. He had 2,534 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, added another 674 yards on the ground with 7 touchdowns. I think about a game last year. I think about the Clemson game. I think how Lenore Sellers just took over that game. If you haven't seen this kid play, South Carolina was one of those on the cusp teams. I think there was an argument for them to be in the college football playoff last year, and that's why I believe that some of it needs to be reworked. I think a lot of us agree with that. Some of the auto bids need to rework, and I think your strength of schedule and your body of work should matter. A game was essentially robbed from South Carolina last year. When you think about the LSU game, that game, if it counts, they win that game. I think they're in a college football playoff. But Lenore Sellers, South Carolina is going to be one of those teams to watch. And you look at it year in and year out, South Carolina puts a lot of talent in the NFL, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So if Lenore Sellers continue doing this, he can be another guy that's making that trip to New York with his dual threat ability and be in the run for the Heisman. I was so proud of Greg McElroy, not because he don't know ball. Greg McElroy, of course, knows ball, but I was surprised that he had Sawyer Robertson on here. Big 12 just don't get a lot of love. Like, I was watching NFL draft, and I'm looking on Twitter seeing people, oh, he played at Colorado. He played against Big 12 defenses. Like, Big 12 don't get no love, bro. For like the last 5 or 6 years, if you really know ball, Big 12 has had the closest game margin. I believe they have the strongest middle class in the sport because there's a lot of really good middle tier teams in the Big 12. And year in and year out, we get a surprise at the Big 12. What's up with this Big 12 hate? Somebody let me know. If y'all don't want your producers dancing all in the videos, go watch Big 12 ball. Please go watch Big 12 ball. What Brent Yormark has been able to do with that conference when there was pretty much genocide on the ACC and Big 12, when SEC was looking for expansion, when the Big Ten was looking for expansion, Brent Yormark, he held his own. He held his own 100%, and I love watching Big 12 ball. Can't wait to go to Big 12 Media Days these years. So kudos to you, Greg McElroy, with having Sawyer Robertson on this list at Baylor. Baylor just seems to figure it out. It was, they just really do. They had Blake Shapen before that. It was almost like them and Mississippi State made a trade for the two. Coming in at number 9, DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway is Nino's guy. I believe DJ Lagway and Lenore Sellers are in the running. My guy Nino, my partner in crime on Overreaction Monday, which we're doing tonight on a Tuesday. Excited for that. So make sure y'all catch that 8:15 p.m. over on the CFB Nation. But DJ Lagway, he had 1,915 yards last season, 12 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. DJ Lagway, and shout out to Nino, my boy Nino had probably one of the takes of the year that DJ Lagway would save Billy Napier's job, and he absolutely did that 100%. And coming in at number 10 is Haynes King from Georgia Tech. I was surprised that he was on the list. Haynes King, I think, had a lot of interceptions, but he had a really great 2023 campaign. His 2024 campaign, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 73% completion percentage. His coach asked him not to turn over the ball because you know what? Brent Key is going to run the ball. That is his mantra. He also had another 587 yards on the ground and 11 touchdowns. So that is Greg McElroy's type 10. Now, this is a solid list. I'm not mad at the list. Overall, this list isn't that bad, if we're being honest. But there's a few gripes I got in. What? Hello? Oh, yeah, I just got a call from the Little Apple. Yeah, that's Manhattan, Kansas. Sunshine Avery, Mr. Johnson, definitely has a horse in this race. He had 2,712 yards passing with 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, 605 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns. Sunshine should definitely be in this top 10. And I love DJ Lagway, and I think DJ Lagway has tremendous upside. I think his ceiling is through the roof. But let's be honest here. Give me the kid from the Little Apple, Manhattan, Kansas. Avery Johnson is on this list if I'm making this list. But, of course, I'm an advocate for ACC and Big 12 ball. Just saying. Luke Altmaier not being on this list is probably the hill that I'm willing to die on most. I look at what he was able to do last season. Illinois was in the top 25 consistently last season. There were just a few games out of being in a college football playoff and having an opportunity to play in a Big 12 conference championship. I like their schedule this year. I believe they're going to make plays. I know they lost a lot of production in the wide receiver room, but I think they found the answers to those. But yes, Luke Altmaier is on this list. Haynes King, I love your production. I love what you've done the last 2 seasons in Atlanta. But Brent Key is your head coach, and Brent Key like to do what? Yeah, he like to run the ball. So I got to take you off this list. It ain't personal, dog, because you know, right? Haynes King, I'm rocking with you, bro. You know, CFB Nation rock with you heavy. Jalen asked you some really good questions in ACC Media Days last year. You come on the list, bro. It ain't personal. It ain't personal at all. And hello? Who in the hell? Why in the hell isn't TCU Josh Hoover on this list? 3,949 yards last year, 27 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. I'm calling it 305. Carson Beck, you're off my list. I'm sorry, it's not personal. Like, bro, the expectations for you last year were high. There were just a few games that I saw and I cannot see. You still put up a decent season last year. I think you were flourishing in the ACC at Miami. I ain't taking nothing against you. I'm just saying you off my list, bro. It ain't personal. Please don't take it personal. You just off my list, dog. But you can chill at the 11th spot. And maybe you can, by the end of the season, you can be back in the top 10. And I guess we're just going to sit here and play make-believe. We're going to play make-believe like this Big 12 hate is real. Rocco back. didn't just have like 2 great back-to-back seasons, 48 touchdowns and 17 interceptions over the last 2 seasons, 11 rushing touchdowns over those last 2 seasons as well. The Big 12 hate as well. I believe Rocco Beck should be in this top 10 as well. Or if he's not in the top 10, he should be right there at the 11th spot. So, like I said, a lot of people probably wondering why Arch Manning isn't on this list. And I like McElroy's approach. He said, I wanted to go with the guys that actually had a bunch of snaps that played majority of the season. That's why I didn't have him in this list. Now, we all know Arch Manning is going to produce, especially in Steve Sarkisian's offense. But to be honest, to be clear, I agree with Greg McElroy. Arch Manning shouldn't be in the top 10. Let's go with guys with real production and a myriad of snaps. So, into the other news, Big 12, I think they matched one of their best outputs. I think it was only 1 year, maybe in 2005, where they had more players selected in the NFL draft. I'm a big advocate for ACC ball. I'm a big advocate for Big 12 ball. I believe it get overlooked. And there's, nothing against the other conference. Maybe it is against the other conference, but nothing against the Big 10. I love the Big 10. Quite a few schools in the Big 10 are friends of the network, and we're allowed to go there whenever. So, shout out to the Big 10 as well. But the Big 12 and the ACC, I'm huge advocates for, because a lot of times I think people feel like it's really like, the Power 2 and a group of 7, like they want to add them down there. But I'm like, if you love college football and you really watch the sport, you start paying attention. But 31 players selected from the Big 12, highest total since 2005. Also set records with 7 running backs and 8 wide receivers drafted. If you want to see offense, you want to see close games that come down to the wire. If you want to see a team or two that comes out of nowhere, or a team or two that disappoint you like Oklahoma State did last year. Who had Arizona State winning the conference last year before the season? Not I. Neither my peers, because I actually had a vote. I'm actually a member of Big 12 media, so I actually had a vote. I submitted a vote, and I think I had Arizona last. But we ain't going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. So every year, like I said, the Big 12 give us exciting ball. So kudos to the Big 12. They were able to get 31 players selected in the NFL draft. Also staying with the Big 12, Deion Sanders inks a $54 million extension to stay with Colorado. Is his heart there? Can we just have a candid discussion? This year, I think it's going to show a lot about who Deion is. What's truly inside of him. Being able to have his boys with him the last 4 seasons between the years at Jackson State and at Colorado, and then Shador's pretty much played with him everywhere. It's going to be weird for him not to have his kids around as much as they embark on their NFL journeys. Is Deion? I believe Boulder loves Deion. I believe Boulder loves what he's done for the community, what he's done for the city, what he's done for the university. But is he sold? And then I think his salary increases to $10 million as a base salary in 2025. So I'm just interested to see, is he sold? Is there greener pastures, whether it's at another university, or is it greener pastures as it pertains to the NFL? I'm not sure if the NFL really want him there. So if he isn't sold on Boulder, Boulder is sold on him. So I believe he should be sold on Boulder. So we're going to get into one of my favorite segments. That's the governor's ruling. And today, as you guys see, the title of today's episode is the House versus NCAA. And I always love the governor's ruling. It's always going to be my favorite segment because it's an editorial piece. I could talk college football. I could talk shop all day. I could talk shop with anybody as it pertains to college football. But I love talking more about the stories behind the scenes that are going on in college football. Like, it's easy to talk about, it's easy to react to games. I prefer to make content in the off season because you gotta do more research, when you're coming up with your sets and your segments. In season it's easy. You're reacting on Mondays and Tuesdays, and Wednesdays you're doing your final reactions. Thursdays and Fridays you're doing predictions. It's so easy during the season, but in the off season I love to take this time and eat. And the governor's ruling is not going to leave. We're going to continue to do editorial pieces even during the season because I love this segment so much. So let's talk more about the House versus the NCAA. And before we really get into this, the House versus NCAA, we need to take a look at how we got here. And it really started with O'Bannon versus NCAA. And that, I think, made a current change. Like, it made a pivotal change as to where we're at now. And this happened in 2015. I remember during that time being mad at Ed O'Bannon and the other players who were suing the NCAA. because NCAA did violate antitrust laws. I remember being mad. I remember just, somebody who's always loved college football, somebody who's always preferred the college football video game series over Madden. I just remember just being angry at oh man, y'all just mad because y'all didn't have success at the next level. Oh, y'all just this, that, and the third. Y'all just trying to look for money. I just remember being in that mind state of just being so upset that this game that I loved and revered was taken away from me. But it technically wasn't, because the revamp community had done an amazing job with it, and they were able to keep the NCAA 14 game alive for a myriad of years. So shout out to them. But yeah, I just remember just being angry at these players. But I don't think I knew at that time, to be honest, that I could foresee where we're at with the sport. And Ed O'Bannon and company paved a major way for we to be where we at today, where players actually get to get paid for their name, for their image, and for their likeness. And that is amazing. So shout out to Ed O'Bannon and all the players who participated in the O'Bannon versus NCAA case. But like I said, my opinion has definitely changed since then. That was just me being, upset at the moment. So I want to talk about even further why this is so huge. They challenged the idea of amateurism. NCAA was able to get away with that word, student athlete amateurism, for a very long time. Universities were making money. Universities were able to fundraise. Universities were able to, pack out these seats, sell jerseys and stuff at the bookstore without the names on the course, make all types of shirts, and, make a lot of money off of these players. But these players weren't able to make money because they deemed it as the education that you receive, the room and board that you receive is enough. How is that a fair trade-off? It was never a fair trade-off. And we can go back to 1990, Boulder, Colorado. You see a bunch of number 1 jerseys in the stadium, and that was representing Eric Bieniemy, but he wasn't getting paid for that. Same time frame, we could probably go to South Bend, Indiana. You'll see a bunch of Rocket Ismail jerseys in the stands, but Rocket Ismail wasn't getting paid for that. Fast forward 13 years later, Ann Arbor, Michigan, you see a bunch of number 1 jerseys in the stadium, but Braylon Edwards wasn't getting paid for that. So the players are the reason these fans are coming to the game. Yes, a lot of those people were former alumni. They got loyalty to the university. Yes, they 100%, but they want to win. Winning is important, and you can't win without these players. And it was so unfair for many years that these players weren't being paid. And of course, we know, truthfully, a lot of them were getting paid under the table. But, the NCAA played hardball a lot of times. So moving forward and kind of telling the story of how we got to the House versus the NCAA, we had that NCAA versus Austin case back in 2021, which is groundbreaking, and that the current NCAA rules as it pertained at the time to amateurism, they violated the antitrust laws and stated that the schools shouldn't be able to benefit off these players' name, image, and likeness, but the players couldn't benefit off their name, image, and likeness, and that the scholarships and free room and board was enough. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. The reason why, a lot of these athletes come to your school, yes, the education matters, but some of these athletes, they're going to do their few semesters and they're heading to the next level. And that's the reason why you want them to come to your school. That wasn't cool. It wasn't cool at all. So let's talk further now about this House versus NCAA. And it marks a pivotal shift and change in college football. It's introducing a $2.8 billion payout to current and former student athletes and paving the way for direct compensations from universities. Because right now, it's not technically direct compensation from universities. Through the NIL, you're able to find money for these student athletes, but it's not direct pay. This is going to allow direct pay via revenue sharing. And I think this move will address the long-standing debates over athletic compensation. It also raises concerns about roster management, scholarship allocations, and overall structure of college sports. One of the major benefits of this ruling is now each university has the ability to offer more scholarships. Each university was, for college football, they were only able to offer 85 scholarships at the time. Now they're able to offer 105 scholarships. But there's a huge hindrance to the settlement is that now these teams can't carry 120 players. The roster limit has been limited to 105 players, and this is why Judge Claudia Wilkin is so important. She wouldn't agree to this segment. She like, the NCAA, we're going to have to find out something about this, because those non-scholarship players who are playing their way to go to college, it's not fair to them that we just kick them off the team due to the roster space. So this is one of the huge things that the NCAA has to figure out because Claudia Wilkin, and shout out to Judge Claudia Wilkin, the Honorable, she just didn't want, these players to be, kicked off the team, and they're paying their way to go to school. So they're trying to figure that out as we speak. I also believe that the revenue sharing aspect of this will help some of the players who hold out, or are tempted to hold out. We know about the Kenshawn Judkins situation. We know about Nico Amaliva situation last year at Tennessee, where him and a few other players were threatening to hold out, knowing that the College Football Playoff Committee gave the university $20 million for making a playoff, but the players didn't get any of that money because there is no revenue sharing. The revenue sharing, I think, is the key to the future of the sport. And I always reference back to this. This is something I always love to talk about. How Joe Clatt always say we are close to the golden era of the sport. We really are. There's still some semantics that we have to figure out. We have to figure out exactly how this revenue share is going to work because, hey, we know that in college athletics, while volleyball is a growing sport, shit on TV a lot, softball is definitely a growing sport, baseball is definitely a growing sport. The kings of collegiate sports are football, number one, and of course, college basketball makes a lot of money during March. I ain't hating on college basketball at all, but I mean, football is king. It is what it is. So how will the payouts be affected is kind of where I'm at with it. Like, if your sport generates X amount of money, the universities are inclined to give X amount of percent to the players. So it'll be also interesting to see how they do it as far as, like, do starters get paid more than everybody else, or will it just be like a stipend, like EA Sports College Football 25 Day, where everybody get the same amount? I don't think a lot of players would be happy with that now, while a lot of players were cool with being in the game last year and the $600. And I believe they're going to have coaches. I believe I saw that Steve Sarkisian and Arch Manning did opt out of College Football 26. I think I did see that somewhere, but hopefully they'll end up being in the game and do a huge announcement like they did last season. But this is the House versus NCAA. Let me know in the comment section how y'all feel about this. Like I said, I love the governor's ruling. I love doing these editorial pieces. It is super important to me that we talk about these things. Like, there's a lot going on in college sports, and we pay attention to the transfer portal. We just had the NFL draft. I think a lot of times we're really missing what's shaping the future of the sport, and it's this. If they can find a way to get the roster limits correct, if they can find a way to get the revenue sharing correct and have it, configured to where it's a set amount of payment for starters, set amount of payment for bench players, I think it can be processed correctly. So shout out to Claudia Wilkins. Shout out to everybody who is making this thing happen. And I'm glad she's not just like being reserved with the NCAA. She's been very firm, really firm. And she's not happy about the antitrust laws that was broken by the NCAA for so many years. So she's holding them accountable. So kudos to her. Hey, man, we're going to go pay some bills. Shout out to our sponsor, BetUS. We're going to take an ad break. Look at you out here using all these other sports books, and you ain't even using the best one. BetUS. Get 125% match bonus when you use the promo code CFB Nation. Yeah, you heard me correctly. 125% match bonus on your first deposit using that code CFB Nation. We know that college football is in the off season, even though we don't celebrate that. CFB Nation, we do college football 24/7, but there are plenty of things for you guys to bet on.
Who will have the most wins? OKC Thunder or Cleveland Cavaliers? Can Luka and LeBron make it all mesh to make it to the play-in tournament? Maybe you're a college basketball guy ready to risk it all for Florida to make it to the big dance.
Basketball isn't for you? Maybe you're a football guy. Well, BetUS got you covered with this year's UEFA Championship. Can Liverpool or Barcelona win it all? Will Erling Haaland or Harry Kane lead their teams to victory?
May is going to get popping when the Kentucky Derby hits town. BetUS has you covered in that way too, with all major horse racing events. Point is, type in that promo code CFB Nation and go get that money.
Shout out to our sponsors, BetUS. You get 125% match bonus on your first deposit using the code CFB Nation. Shout out to everybody who's watching this right now. I truly appreciate it. You guys been rocking with us. The numbers are consistently going up. Things have been steady. We streaming on 3 platforms right now. We're streaming on my Twitter. We're streaming on CFB Nation Twitter. And then we also streaming on my YouTube channel, Governor College Football. Make sure you guys are subscribed to all of that. It's going to be a fun year. I promise you, I got y'all. Tomorrow, I didn't plan on going live tomorrow because I have a meeting in the morning. But I was talking to Moon. I'm like, yo, maybe we should do an evening episode. So tomorrow's live stream will be going live at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Governor of College Football in the evening. So that'd be kind of cool. I'm excited about that. So let's get into the next news. We got Big Ten FanDuel win totals. What is your favorite team win total projected to be by FanDuel? And do I believe your team can meet that win total? That is the question. So Arizona's at 5.5 points. Arizona was really disappointed in this past season. You would think what they were able to establish in 2023 will continue in 2024, but they did have a coaching change. Noah Fafita just looked like a fraction of himself because he lit it up in 2023. He struggled in 2024. But I believe that Noah Fafita can be one of those comeback players of the year. This is something I was talking to Moon about. And Moon and I talk a lot of times. We'll talk while we're playing the game or while we're working on our playbook. And I was like, I think Arizona's going to be better than advertised this year. I think the additions of Chris Hudson from Washington State and Luke Weissong from New Mexico will help this team out immensely. 5.5 is friendly. They do have a tough schedule, but give me the over. I'm taking the over with Arizona. I believe they're going to win a lot of ball games this year. And let's take a look at their schedule before we move on to the next team. Alrighty, so the Arizona Wildcats. Week 1, on August 30th, they play Hawaii. Then they play Weber State. Week 2. Week 3, they play Kansas State. All 3 of those games are home games. I think it'll be important for them to get started. And they do have one more home game than away games. I think they have 7 home games this season and 5 away games. Then they go on their open week. Then they go at Iowa State. Iowa State is, I think, is the team to beat in the Big 12 this upcoming season. October 4th, they play home against Oklahoma State. October 11th, they play home against BYU. I don't know what BYU is going to be at this year. October 18th, they play at Houston against Willie Fritz and company. Huge believer in Willie Fritz. I'm just not sure if their team is there quite yet. October 25th, they got an open week. November 1st, they got to go at Colorado. Like I said, Big 12 has such a really good middle class. You really don't know year in and year out who are going to be the teams competing for the conference. That's why I love so much about this conference. November 8th, they play home against Kansas. November 15th, they play at Cincinnati. November 22nd, they play home against Baylor. And then November 28th or 29th, they play against Arizona State. So I'm excited for Arizona. I'm expecting them to be bowl eligible this year at least. So I am taking the over, and I'm also taking Noah Fafita as one of those comeback players of the year. Let's move right along. Up next, we got Arizona State. Arizona State is slated to win 8.5 games by what FanDuel say. Let's take a look at their schedule. Arizona State, surprise the season last year. They played versus NAU August 30th at Mississippi State. It'll be interesting to see what that matchup is. I think it'll be a good measuring stick game for both both programs. I'd be interested to see what's going on in Starkville this year. I think if Jeff Lebby is one of those guys I really love, especially as an offensive coordinator. Really got a bad break last year with Shaping being injured. But I want to see what Mississippi State is this year. I think a lot of people are counting them out and probably believing that Jeff Lebby is on the hot seat. But I'm interested to see that game. Then versus Texas State. That's going to be another measuring stick game to really see what this Arizona State team is and see if they can continue. Then they go at Baylor. Then they play versus TCU. Then they have an open week. Then they go at Utah. This is a tough schedule. Then they play Texas Tech. They play versus Houston. Then they go at Iowa State. They got another open week. Then they play versus West Virginia, which is home. And then they go at Colorado. Then, of course, they play Arizona. 8.5 games. That means they will win 9. Can they win 9 games? Absolutely. But right now, I want to say it's a push, but I ain't going to say it's a push. I'm going to say give me the under. I'm comfortable with 8 games. 9 games wouldn't surprise me. But right now, I'm not comfortable in taking the over. So, unfortunately, I have to take the under. Baylor's at 7.5 games. Let's go over Baylor's schedule. They play home versus Auburn. I'm telling you, Auburn's gonna be really good this year. Then they go at SMU. They play home versus Samford. They play versus Arizona State. Then they play at Oklahoma State. They play versus Kansas State. They have a bye. Then they go at TCU, at Cincinnati. Home versus UCF. Then home versus Utah, at Arizona. And then home versus Houston. That is Baylor Bears schedule. I think they have them at 7.5. That one is tough. And while I do love a lot of the pieces that Baylor have, I'm comfortable with 6 games, so I'm taking it under. BYU 7.5 games. Respectfully, I'm not touching it. They had a really great season last year. They were really physical last season. I believe in what they're building. I'm just not touching it. And don't take it personal. I go over their schedule and I ain't touching the 7.5 games. I mean, they got to win 8. They play versus Portland State, versus Stanford. They should start off 2-0. They go to open week at East Carolina. I think that game will be a tougher game than people believe. At Colorado, home versus West Virginia. At Arizona versus Utah. Iowa State, open week at Texas Tech versus TCU. At Cincinnati versus UCF. I ain't touching that one. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section. What y'all think BYU gonna be this year? They surprised the hell out of me last season. I'm not sure where they at this year. Cincinnati, 6.5 games. That mean they gotta win 7. That mean they go bowl eligible plus 1 more. Now I'm taking the under. Scott Satterfield is coaching for his job right now. I believe he's 1,000% on the hot seat. And I said this 3 years ago, and it wouldn't surprise me if you'd have told me that 3 years ago. It just wouldn't. That's just what we all were with that hire. That's what we, especially after the culture that Luke Fickell was able to build in Cincinnati, the culture that Brian Kelly was able to build in Cincinnati. You just look and say, hey, they need another guy like that. That's not who they got. And I'm taking the under, and I'm comfortable with it. But could they be a surprise team? They absolutely could. We always get a surprise team every year in the Big 12, or surprise teams, plural, in the Big 12 every year. I'm just not comfortable with that, them winning 7 games, so I'm taking the under. Colorado, 6.5 games. 6 games I'm comfortable with, not comfortable with 7. Due to the loss of production. They lost a lot of production in the wide receiver room. Also loss of production in the backfield. Kaden Salter will be must-see TV this year. I think he'll play wonderful this year. I love that coaching staff. They got a lot of former NFL players on that coaching staff. I'm comfortable with 6. I ain't comfortable with 7. So I'm going to take the under. I'm sorry, Boulder faithful. I got to take the under. Houston, 5.5 game. Already told you how I feel about head coach Willie Fritz. Huge fan of his. And I talk about this middle class that the Big 12 have and how great the middle class is in the Big 12. I'm just not comfortable taking the over. Bowl, because of Willie Fritz, them making a bowl game wouldn't be surprising, but I just have to take the under. I think they'll get the 5. I just didn't see 6. Iowa State. I said it in the opening. Matt Campbell and the Iowa Cyclones really impressed me last season. I know we look at the debacle in the Big 12 championship, what Arizona State was able to do with them, but going 10-3, and I said this during Big 12 media days last year. I said it in the moon. I said it live. It's one of the earlier episodes of Governor of College Football. That I thought that it was time for Matt Campbell to put up or shut up. That was the exact verbiage I used. It was time for him to put up or shut up. I think they put up last year. And Rocco Beck, mark this, book this, clip this. Rocco Beck may have a Kenny Pickett style jump as it pertains to the 2026 NFL draft. Because I believe, while many people believe, we have things set in stone. If we go off of last year, things set in stone, Carson Beck is supposed to be the guy heading into the 2025 NFL draft. I believe Rocco Beck can have that Kenny Pickett style jump heading into the next season. I'm buying all of the Iowa State stock, 7.5 games. Give me that. I'm taking that. This is a book it. Go bet this right now. I believe the Iowa State Cyclones will win the Big 12 this upcoming season. Shout out to Matt Campbell and company. Shout out to Rocco Beck. Rocco Beck, I'm expecting big things out of you this year. I believe he's going to put up some tremendous numbers. Kansas has 7.5 games. Lance Leopold has always been one of those coaches I liked as well. With Jalen Daniels coming back, and they got a sneaky good get in the portal, and I don't think a lot of people saw it, but the fans in Iowa City know that they got a really good get in LaShawn Williams. Didn't play much last season, but had a stellar campaign in 2023 in Iowa City. I think he had over 800 yards that year. So he gives that Kansas that type of back that they'll need. Bryson Canty for Columbia is another name to watch coming up from the FCS level. You ought to know that name in the wide receiver room. But with that being said, I think they'll win 6 or 7 games. I can't go 8 for Kansas. Sorry, Lance Leopold and company and everybody in Lawrence, Kansas. But yeah, give me 7 games. Kansas State. I believe in Chris Kleiman. Jerron Bradley is back in the Big 12. You guys know I was a big fan of his a couple of years ago. I think I actually had him coming off his 2022 campaign when he completely balled out as I think he was a true freshman or maybe a redshirt freshman in that 2022 campaign at Texas Tech. Welcome back to the Big 12, Jerron Bradley. Things just didn't work out in BC for you last year for whatever reason. I hope you come back with the biggest chip in the world on your shoulder. He can be one of those top targets for Sunshine Avery Johnson this upcoming season. Give me the over with Kansas State. As long as Chris Kleiman is coaching, you can always give me the over. Oklahoma State at 5.5 games. We can look at their schedule. I was really disappointed in this team last year. And I'm just not certain where they're at this year. I think I'm going to take the under. They play versus UT Martin, then at Oregon. Oh, Lord. Home versus Tulsa, versus Baylor, at Arizona, versus Houston, versus Cincinnati. Okay. At Texas Tech, at Kansas, Kansas State, UCF, Iowa State. 5.5 is generous if you're an Oklahoma State fan and you believe what Coach Gundy is able to bring to your program still, even after the abysmal season that they had last season. 5.5 is generous. So just me betting on that, I would probably go with the over. I think their schedule in the front half is probably, other than the Oregon game, is probably easier. 6 games would be tough. I'm not sure where I'm at with that. I think that'll be a push for me. Let's go ahead and look at TCU's schedule. They're up next. They play at North Carolina. Great measuring stick game for both teams. See, that Chapel Hill fan base is going to be electric that first game. Bill Belichick gets to run onto that field. That's going to be dope to see. Great measuring stick game for both teams. I really want to see what Gio Lopez is. So I'm liking that. Then they have an open week. That's an early open week. Then they play Abilene Christian. Then they play SMU. Brett Lashley and SMU did a stupendous job last season. I don't believe they'll repeat that. I think teams will watch that Penn State team and figure out how they do a beautiful job with the RPO, but I think teams will figure out how to get Kevin Jennings off his game. They go at Arizona State and play versus Colorado, at Kansas State versus Baylor, at West Virginia versus Iowa State, at BYU, at Houston, at Cincinnati. 7.5. Can Sonny Dykes have that 22S type season that he had where TCU came out of nowhere? It'll be interesting. 6.5 game, I think, is friendly for them. I'll go out on a limb and take the over. Texas Tech is, I mean, if there's a team that won a portal, god damn it was Texas Tech. So Texas Tech, let's go over their schedule. They got August 30th versus Arkansas Pine Bluff. That's at home. Kent State, one of the worst teams in the group of 5. I think they're 1-23 their last 24 games. You can book that victory versus Oregon State. Texas Tech could come out 3-0 before they got their first Big 12 matchup at Utah. Then they have an open week at Houston, and versus Kansas, at Arizona State versus Oklahoma State, at Kansas State versus BYU. Then they're home again versus UC. How many home games they got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they're another team with 7 home games and 5 away games. Really good job there. And then November 22nd, they have their open weekend, and they have at West Virginia. West Virginia, I think, is going to be a sneaky team in this conference. 8.5 games is probably friendly because I know a lot of people buying a lot of stock for Texas Tech. I can certainly see them 9-3. I'll take the over on that. UCF at 6.5 games. Scott Frost, welcome back to Orlando. I'm sure the fan base is happy to see him back there. Last season, I believe me, Moon, and Jalen over-evaluated this team. We just thought this could be really one of those sneaky teams in the Big 12 last year. And we possibly could have been a year early with that feeling. But I thought they had some talent. But there was just some games last year. I watched UCF, and I'm like, go back to the G5, bro. That Colorado game was hard to watch. It was embarrassing to watch. Because Colorado, physically beat them. And Colorado ain't nothing physical about Colorado. They physically beat them last year. So I didn't enjoy it. 6.5 games, that means they'll win 7. Can Scott Frost be bowl eligible? We saw what Scott Frost did in his first stint at Central Florida. So absolutely, they could be, but I'll take the under there. Utah at 7.5, that means they got to win 8. I've always believed in Utah. I always thought they played physical style ball. Last year, somewhat they didn't really look like themselves, but they have at UCLA then versus Cal Poly. Be interesting to see what that first game is. We get Utah versus UCLA. We get to see what that Nico experience is really going to be like. Then they play home versus Cal Poly. Then at Wyoming versus Texas Tech. At West Virginia. The schedule is rough, bro. Open week. Then they play home versus Arizona State. Then they go at BYU. Home versus Colorado. Home versus Cincinnati. And bye week at Baylor versus Kansas State. Then at Kansas. That is the Utah Ute schedule. Utah could be one of those surprising teams in the conference this year. Could they win 8 games? They could. But I'm going to take the under on that. Respectfully, I'm taking the under on that because I've always been a huge believer in that program. Rich Rod, welcome back to Mountaineer Country. They play week 1 versus Robert Morris. Week 2 versus Ohio. That's at Ohio. Week 3 versus Pitt. Week 4, they go at Kansas, so they go to Lawrence. Week 5 versus Utah. Week 6 at BYU. And fun fact, FanDuel didn't have an over-under for this West Virginia team. I'm thinking West Virginia disappointed us a lot last year. Neil Brown and company. I'm just thinking that they're not sure. They're not exactly sure where this team is going to be at. Well, Rich Rod back in a place where we learned to know who he was. I just think they're unsure, and I'm honestly unsure what they expect out of this team this year. They had that open week after that. Then they go at UCF, home versus TCU, at Houston, home versus Colorado, at Arizona State, open week, then versus Texas Tech. That is a tough schedule on the back end. I can see why. Like, could West Virginia 100% be that surprise team out of the Big 12 this year? They could. They absolutely could, especially with Rich Rod there. They really could be one of those teams. I'm interested to see where they at. I'm interested to see the evolution of Rich Rod's spread offense. We got to see it last year. Jacksonville State surprised a lot of teams last year. So I'm interested to see where they'll be at overall. This is another fun episode, man. I truly enjoy the live element. I truly enjoy seeing people in here watching the show, enjoying the content. I mean, this is the reason why we do it, man. As I always like to say, there are no more victories in the sport that survive in the fast. That's why college football has the greatest regular season. And until next time, thank you all for tuning in. Remember, tomorrow we'll be live at 4 p.m. I'll probably use my Discord to ask a few mailbag questions. We'll go with some mailbag questions. I'm interested to see what the evening brings. Don't forget, tonight, 8:15 p.m. over at CFB Nation, we'll be doing Overreaction Monday on a Tuesday. You all take care. Governor of college football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's CJ on
Defensive
the
minds.
track.
They have to be better on that side of the ball.